I normally use Zoom because Zoom will allow you to record.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it says
I
it's
got.
recording.
All right. Well, Zach, thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I'm excited to be here, man.
Good, good. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
Well, 29, live in San Diego, California, probably one of the higher tax areas in the United States. I grew up conservative Christian family, and like most conservative Christian kids, you either do one of two things: you either rebel against it, or you go with the flow. And I chose to rebel against it for a long time and try to find my own way, and ended up at a conservative Christian college. Um, and just kind of had to find my own identity. You learn all these things about politics and why you do things growing up because your parents do it, and then going out into the workforce and having to learn it about myself and learn a little bit just about life. Had to kind of develop my own ideologies, but um, I would say that a lot of it's developed over the last 5 years or so. In my early 20s, when I wasn't making much money, it didn't matter much to me at all. But as I got a little bit older and the paychecks started to get a little bit bigger, I was like, man, this is unfortunate. So I really had to learn how to adapt and kind of figure things out. But that's more of the political side of things. Otherwise, just normal guy trying to make it in this world.
Yeah.
We live in an amazing country, so I'm very privileged, very lucky.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, I have some similar story to you, except I guess my rebellion wasn't as long as yours, I would say. Um,
Yeah.
but needless to say, it still happened. But I guess like my question for you is now, like living in, because I live in Vegas, you know that, live here in
Hmm.
Las Vegas. But there's a lot of conservatives here in Vegas. I know there's a lot of conservatives in California,
Hmm.
but I know the huge tagline for California is like it's hardcore left, you know.
Yeah.
So do you have a lot of friends that are liberal, or do you tend to live more in an echo chamber like myself?
Um, I would say it's pretty mixed because I went. My parents had me attend a private Christian university or a private Christian high school, and but I lived outside of that echo chamber for the most part. So the people that are friends from high school definitely have more conservative values. The people that I've met outside of high school, just in my day to day activities, are definitely more left wing. You know, uh, it's really funny. Even a conservative Californian is considered nationally pretty left wing.
Hmm.
So for the most part, even though my politics are fairly conservative compared to a lot of middle America, it's kind of similar to what you would call like a East Coast Republican. How the they just when you live in this big uh, a city as big as San Diego and a state as big as California, it gets so muddied so quickly. But yeah, there is definitely a large, especially in San Diego. San Diego has a lot of conservatives because there are a lot of transplants because of the military. We're a big military town, so the
Yeah.
Navy, the Army, the Air Force all have stuff out here in San Diego. So a lot of those transplants do bring in a lot of conservative ideals, which is great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, like, what is it like when you interact with somebody who's a friend of yours, but happens to also be a liberal? Like, what is your relationship with them like?
It, I pretty much it's the same. The reason why I love your podcast and I love what you put out is it's about making America civil again, and it's the idea of we can have different ideas, we can have different values, but we can still get along because at the end of the day, us locking ourselves in our house watching Netflix and Hulu isn't going to help further society. It's not going to further anything. So really, it's just like, for example, a good friend of ours, we actually met at a dog park. Uh, and we just had common grounds of we both have a dog and she
Yeah.
is a tattoo artist, and they're very left leaning, very pro life or pro abortion, vegan, like the classic what you would call left wing California person. And we still hang out like it's no big deal. They know we go to church, they know we're conservative Christians. they don't treat us any differently, even though we don't see eye to eye on a lot of that stuff. And we don't see eye to eye because we just don't let it affect our lives. And really, it comes down to a personal choice of, are you going to let somebody's political opinion dictate what you believe about them as a person? And we just try not to let it get in the way. With a lot of my conservative friends, I even disagree because a lot of them are just on the Trump train, and I'm more of a libertarian. I'm more about personal accountability, personal freedom, and being the best that you can be for yourself and living within your own little family, doing the best to progress your family. And we disagree on a lot of things too, because I'm, President foot in your mouth guy. I'm like, I try to be supportive of whoever's president. I want the best for the country. But at the same time, I'm not just going to blindly be like, yeah, Trump said it, so it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I kind of feel like that as a conservative, the moment you tell people you're a conservative, they naturally say, oh, so you're a Republican. Because I'm a
Yeah.
libertarian too,
Yeah.
right? Sovereignty of the individual over against the state, like individual liberties, like we're all for. And a Republican to say, yeah, I'm for that. But then you try to call the president, like you try to call the president, not their president, but the president out on a few things like how much he's spending and the tariffs he's doing, which Republicans were against before, but all of a sudden it's okay,
Yeah.
and so yeah, that's. I think my wife's here. Anyways, so yeah, I just saw a car like randomly back up into my garage, like, or my driveway. I was like, "Who's that?" But anyways, that's what we're saying. But yeah, so that's pretty neat how you can like have like liberal friends and conservative friends, but like who would you say you end up talking about politics with more? Would it be the liberals, or is that something you just avoid? Because I can see you like kind of pushing back on your conservative friends a little bit more than you would like a liberal friend. Because like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What do you think about that?
To be 100% honest, it's a lot more difficult to talk to the liberal friends that I have about politics because it becomes extremely defensive quickly or it becomes extremely offensive quickly, where they're either attacking you on your viewpoints or attacking me personally on viewpoints. Like, I can't believe that you would eat animals, or I can't believe that you would support, a wall, or I can't believe you would support this, or I'm not, well, I don't do this or I don't do that. And it becomes very difficult. Whereas I find that with a lot of people a lot of the right leaning friends and people that I come in contact with um, are more open to discussion about things, or at least they feel safer discussing it because their arguments aren't necessarily based on emotion and feeling. They're more based on what's happening, and in the moment it's easier for them to have a discussion because it's like, well, this is happening, and because this is happening, this is going to happen, or logically progressing through something, rather than like, I feel this way, and because I feel this way, things need to be this way, or I feel this way, so they shouldn't be this way. And uh, so yeah, I agree with that. It can be more difficult. A lot of people don't understand libertarianism. Like, when I try to explain to them what a libertarian is, they don't get it because they're like, well, no, you're a conservative. And I'm like, well, no, I'm a conservative leaning libertarian. There are things that I am socially conservative on, and there are things that I'm socially left on. And there are things, economically that I'm more left on and more right on. It varies because it's a case by case basis, and it's a study by study basis, where rather than just saying, well, like, oh, well, this politician said this, so I agree with them because I agree with that politician. It's like, no, develop your own identity, and that's what libertarian truly calls for. And
Yeah.
not to, I'll get into it later if we have time, but like, I'm so much lately has been talking about the electoral college and talking about like, oh, should it be popular over electoral college, and that's not really the argument that needs to happen. It should be more of a bipartisanship conversation of, is bipartisanship good for the country or bad for the country? Is it safe to say and fair to say that all of the country should fall into one of two categories, Republican or Democrat? And it's like, most people don't, and they have to try to fit their square peg into a round hole, or whatever shape it is. And maybe the discussion needs to be moved more towards, can there be multiple successful parties in the United States? And I think you see a lot of that now where the Libertarian Party is growing, but you also have the extreme left-wing party of democratic socialism, which is growing at a pretty rapid pace, which is kind of scary.
Yeah. No, and I think, I think we talked about this before about the whole idea of being more than a two-party country. And that's
Yeah.
actually like one of the things George Washington addressed in his farewell speech. But, with him back then, it was the Federalist Party versus back then, the Republican Democratic Party is what they called themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
he was like warning, like, that's not a good thing. We need to get away from that. And, then it became just the Democrats versus the Whigs. And then the Whigs kind of fell off and the Republicans started coming up. And then now, and with Abraham Lincoln. And so now we find ourselves in the exact same system that we've always been in. Right. But I
Mm-hmm.
think you will eventually see one party start to kind of fade away, but then another party will just rise up. And the neat thing about libertarians is libertarians don't even like other libertarians. It's like
Yeah.
they get annoyed with each other. And it's like, well, you're not a true libertarian,
Yeah.
which kind of goes to show that like the Libertarian Party does veer towards free thinking, and pushing away from this two-party system is actually a good thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm fearful of the democratic socialist ideology
Yeah.
myself, just like you are. But like, I think it's very interesting how you want to change the nuance of the argument. So I think it's kind of compelling, right? How you're talking about no, it shouldn't be about the electoral college. Well, it's in the Constitution, so there's going to be a lot of change if you're going to get out of the Constitution.
Yeah.
But you're talking about this two-party system. Like, do you know anyone who is like, you don't have to name any names, but like a full-fledged Trump supporter, and what that is like talking to them when
Yeah.
principally they're wrong, right?
Yeah.
Like principally, like you've held to these principles for so long. Why are you going back from them? Like, can you like? I know you know people.
Yeah. I mean, just to throw a blanket, like my whole entire family and, you know, are big Trump supporters. It's now some of them, as his presidency has gone on, have gone from I'm not really a Trump supporter. I just voted for him because I didn't want Hillary to now I support Trump. And the other half of them have gone from Trump can do no wrong to, you know, he's the best of a bad situation kind of thing. And I've seen, you know, this kind of crossing of like where people who were high on Trump are kind of like, well, it's better than Hillary, and people who were not high on Trump come in here, and there's kind of that intersecting ground of where really most people sit at is where it's like we want the best for our country. He might not be the best for our country, but he's not necessarily doing the worst. Trump so far has been doing a lot of things that are great for the economy, but at the same time, he has a hard time keeping his hands out of things that he shouldn't have his hand in, or that, and it's not necessarily that he shouldn't have his hand in, but it's just a matter of, hey, you've got bigger fish to fry. You're leading a country of 365 plus million people, and your job isn't necessarily to comment on what, you know, the Cuomo brothers are doing, or, you know, like,
Freda.
yeah, any of these people. It's like, hey, leaders aren't concerned with what's going on that doesn't affect their ability to lead. And that's one thing that I've had a hard time with Trump, even though, because here's the thing, even this is the same thing I would say under Obama. When I was young when Obama got elected. I was 18. That is like unbelievable to me that I got to vote in that election, because thinking about where my mindset was at that time, I didn't. It was just unbelievable that I had a say so in the country. Now I live in California, so my vote didn't really matter in the sense that it's going to be a Democratic state, but uh, it was just one of those things that I wish that people would understand, that you should want the best for your country regardless of who wins. Even if your guy doesn't win, you should still hope that the person who wins does phenomenal and is great for the country, because why would you want failure? Like, why would you want people to lose and not do well? That's not a capitalistic thought.
Mm,
That is a
that's, mm,
it's a detrimental thought, because in capitalism you want everybody to win. You
yeah.
just want to be better than the person who's also winning. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
Nope.
it's a competitive society. And there's a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. He is um, he's a big cap. He's just a great business guy, and he said that in society nowadays, there's a competition of who can build the tallest building. Think about it like that. Everyone's trying to build the highest building, and there's two ways to have the highest building: either build your building higher than the next highest, or to tear down everyone else's building so that yours is higher.
Yours is higher.
And
Yeah.
that's such a true thought, because so many people nowadays are going like, well, I don't feel like building my building, so I'm just going to tear down everyone around me. And
Yeah.
that's so, if you put the political lens on it, it's like, well, we can't necessarily speak to these people in a civil manner, so we're just going to tear down everything that they believe and fight it. And that's just, it's really hard to see, because I know that you would probably agree with this, but this is a very divided time. The right and the left are very, very different right now, and it's hard to see how we can come back together in some form of unison and progress as a whole country, as a whole nation, rather than we just want our ideas to progress and our ideas to progress. That's very dangerous. That's not good.
Yeah. No, I like what you're saying. Like, no, I feel like that's like right on, right? Like right now we're in a place in our country where if you tweeted something 10 years ago, now you're ostracized,
Oh yeah.
right? Like, and I was just, I know there's been like a rave going on, but before this conversation, I was just watching the Dave Chappelle, Sticks and Stones.
I haven't seen it yet, but I heard it's
Oh,
funny.
dude, it is hilarious because he talks about he brings up Kevin Hart and how he tweeted that, and clearly he was being funny, but he couldn't host the Oscars because he tweeted something 5 years ago. And Dave Chappelle's like, come on, like what, like, and so there's a lot of politics in there, but he really calls out America and where we're Gary Vee clearly said it more eloquently and less comedically than Dave Chappelle did. But I think the point is true, right? Like, why are we rooting against someone? Like, I don't know if you're on Twitter, but just the other day it said something. It was something was trending about like 45 being dead or something. Like people were sad that it wasn't that Trump died. And it's like if like as a conservative, if I found out that President Obama died as president, I don't care about his policies. I'd be
It's
caring
awful.
for Michelle and his family and who and his friends and all the people around him more so than like, yes, he's dead. It's just like, but
Yeah.
then at the same time, I'm thinking, but like, Mike Pence is more conservative than Donald Trump. So it's like it's
Yeah.
not any better for you, right?
Yeah.
But I couldn't wrap my head around that because, yeah, like you were saying, like it just doesn't, like we've gotten so divided as a nation.
Yeah.
But I think you have a unique situation because living in California, yeah, I mean, you naturally have to have friends who are on the left, and you naturally have to have friends who are on the right.
Yeah.
But like as a libertarian, I have to ask, what's your biggest like when you look at the the political makeup of our country right now, and you look at what's going on with the left and the democratic socialists, what is it about it that makes you like maybe nervous or anxious or like what do you think about democratic socialism?
I think that what it comes down to at its core is it's a lack of personal responsibility, and then people want someone else to make up for their lack of personal responsibility. To make it personal, um, I used to be over 400 pounds, and when I was over 400 pounds, I was constantly making excuses on why it was everybody else's fault that I was 400 pounds, or why it was, oh, it's, my wife's cooking, or it's, I have a job that's too busy, or it's this, it's that, it's this. And when that happens and you're constantly putting your problems off on everyone else and everything else around you, that lack of personal responsibility makes you have a lack of respect for those of those people around you in the situation that you're actually in. And to put that in the scope of a political thing, if personal responsibility starts with you, meaning that is the core of the libertarianism, is I'm responsible for myself and I want to be responsible for myself. That is the next thing, is like, it's like the 12-step program of recognizing you're an alcoholic and admitting you have a problem. It's like, I am a human being and I am responsible for myself. That is like the first 2 steps of the 12-step libertarian program. And what people need to understand is that, like, you cannot be mad at other people if you're not taking responsibility for yourself. You really shouldn't necessarily be doing that. And with democratic socialism, what I see is they want to take everybody's and say we're all responsible for each other. And that is great in small things like your family structure. That's what family is. It is a small socialist organization. It's me, my wife, and hopefully one day my future kids. And that is our little small socialistic fabric. And from there, things should become less socialistic as they spread out. The element of personal responsibility is where you're responsible to yourself and your family. And outside of that, why should I be responsible for my neighbor? And the big problem that I see is that when people say that somebody else needs to be responsible for me as well, then they're taking the burden off of them. And eventually what it leads to is this, well, it's not my fault, or it's this person's fault, and it crumbles on itself. Socialism in itself is not horrible ideas, but when you're trying to put it on 365 million people, it's a horrible idea. When you're trying to put socialism on a scale of 5 people, your little family, it's great.
Yeah.
It's your little family structure. It's like, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to collect, and we're all going to bring together, and we're going to make this family great. And we're going to make what happens within the walls and the confines of this home fantastic. And it's going to be our little utopia, whatever it is. And that is fine in itself. And you want to expand it out to 100 people, great. You want to expand it out to 1,000 people, great. You know, like however big your family is. But when you're trying to implement a thing where everybody has to believe the same idea on 365 million people, on a non-homogeneous society where everyone has freedom of religion, freedom of choice, freedom of what to say, it's borderline impossible. It is a utopian thought. And the problem with utopia is it doesn't exist. We live in a flawed, chaotic world where people are entitled to believe what they believe, and people think differently. That's what makes us amazing as human beings, is that we all have the cognitive ability to develop our own set of thoughts and principles that we want to live by. But when you try to say that everybody needs to live by the same set of principles, forcibly, not by choice, that's where it becomes impossible. And that's why democratic socialism is flawed from the get-go, because you have flawed people in a utopian ideal, and it doesn't work. You can't put flawed people into something that has to work perfectly in order to work.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like what you said about just like on a small scale it works, because that's exactly what it is, right? Like my wife works, I work, we come home, we put all the money together, and we're all able to survive off of it. You know, we have our own little healthcare that we live off of, and we're okay with it. Right. And even like on a smaller scale, like if my neighbor needs something, I'll give it to him. But it's like that's when it becomes like voluntary. Right. Like you can call me whatever you want. If I say no to helping you, I should have the right to say no to helping you. Right. You shouldn't get mad at me if I say no. Like and that's like, as Christians, you and I both being Christians, we both know that we are called to help the poor. Like Christ tells us, you do it for the least of these. If you do it for the least of these, you do it for me. Right. And so it's not that we don't want to, but it's like, I don't feel the personal responsibility if the government's doing it for me. Right. Like I don't feel I'm not being obedient to the call of my Lord if they say do this, or, hey, they're doing it for me. Right. It's like, hey, like Lord Jesus says, do this. I'm like, oh, the government's got it. You know, it's like there's nothing there. But you mentioned how you were 400 pounds. And you're not anymore. You're looking great. I watch your videos in the gym. I'm like, dude, you're still but for all those who might be struggling with their weight or looking to lose weight, like me, myself, I can lose a few pounds. What is your secret? So everyone's listening in, nice and close, because there's a secret that no one else has that you have. So tell it.
So I've done. If you've ever struggled with your weight, one of the biggest things is fad diets. It's like, oh, I'm going to hop on keto and I'm going to lose a few pounds, or I'm going to do this or that. And yeah, diets work, but the problem with diets is diets are temporary. And what it really comes down to is you have to make a life change. You have to flip a switch in your head that says, I'm no longer going to make a temporary change. I'm going to make a life change. And we live in a culture, in a society nowadays that wants results, and we want them fast. And the problem with that is, as soon as you start to see any sort of degradation of progress, you give up and you move on to the next best thing. And that's dangerous, because when you think about weight gain, when you put on weight, you didn't put it on in 2 months. You didn't put it on in 3 months. And if you did, then it's going to be quick to come off, because it was quick weight gain. It's quick weight that's going to come off. And, a fad diet might work to get the weight back off as long as you have something to do afterwards. But what you have to understand is that it might have taken you 5 or 10 years to put on 50 pounds. So it might take, if it took you any amount of time less than 5 or 10 years to take back off that 50 pounds, then it's a net gain. And the problem is that people want a fast ROI, or return on investment. I want to go to the gym, I want to eat healthy, and I want to do it for 2 weeks and lose 20 pounds. That is great, but people don't understand the science behind it. And if you wanted to lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks, that means that you would have to be in an 80,000, or what is that, 80, yeah, approximately 80,000 calorie deficit in 2 weeks, which is nuts. That would mean that you would have to burn 80,000 calories more than you ate in order to lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks, which is borderline impossible for most people. So what people need to understand is there are ways to do it and there are ways not to do it. And where I've kind of focused my research into is fasting. It kind of goes back to a time where humans lived in hunter-gatherer societies, and they didn't necessarily have the foods and resources around them to always be able to eat, but they ate when they could, and they ate what they did, and there was periods of time where they did not have food in them. This goes back to the way that your body operates on a circadian clock and a circadian rhythm, which essentially is an autonomic schedule that your body goes through every single day. When you start eating, it starts to release enzymes in your body for about the next hour, 9 hours, to break down food. And then it starts to release hormones that make you tired and go to sleep, and then you go to sleep, and then your internal clock releases hormones again, which wake you up. And all these different things are going on without you knowing every single day. Well, there is a great research physician named Dr. Sachinananda Panda, or something like that. But if you just Google Dr. Panda, intermittent fasting, he's done a lot of research on time-restricted eating and how if you eat within a certain window of time, it's better for your body because it's healthier on your circadian rhythm, and your body will process foods better. That combined with fasted exercise, meaning maybe go and exercise 20 minutes before you put anything in your body, because that way your body is burning fat for energy during that period of time, and then it gets your metabolism up. When you eat food, it breaks it down. So to go into years of research in a matter of 2 minutes here, what I did is I started by cutting a few things out of my diet one at a time, because people want to make big changes, and it's great. You want to make big changes. Do it over time, not over a short period of time, but a long period of time to do big change. And make a few changes, set them in for a few weeks, and when you start to see things stale out, make another change and drop something else off. And that's what I did for a little while. And then I got into juice fasting, and then I got into intermittent fasting and 1 meal a day. And I lost 178 pounds in 13 months, because what I did is I kept changing things up on myself. And that's the problem, is people, when they hit a wall, they give up rather than evaluate, make change, and move forward. And it goes back to anything with personal responsibility. Be responsible for yourself, look at where you are, and think to yourself, if I make a change today, one change, I'm not going to drink soda again. Great, you're not going to drink soda again. Well, make that one change, and rather than just do it for like 2 months and expect to lose all your weight, think, okay, what does that one change look like over 10 years? And then maybe a few weeks later, you add one more change. And what does that look like over 10 years? Think about it like a boat traveling across a lake versus a boat traveling across an ocean. If a boat travels across a lake and it's 1 degree off, it's still going to get where it needs to get for the most part. It might be a little bit off target, but it's going to be a little bit. But if a boat travels from New York to England and it's 1 degree off, it's a difference of it ending up in Ireland or Spain or something potentially. Like that 1 degree over a long period of time makes a big significant change. So my biggest advice to anybody out there struggling with weight is this: make a few small changes and tell yourself that these changes are going to take time, and just go with that. Just understand that it's going to take time, be patient, but don't put too much stress on your body at one time, and just take it slow. Get out there, exercise, diet, drink at least half your body weight in ounces of water per day. So if you weigh 200 pounds, drink 100 ounces of water a day, and stay active. Netflix will always be there.
Preaching. Uh-oh. Well, Zach, thank you so much for coming on here and doing this. Clearly, we have to do this again. We have to, and we definitely will. But yeah, so you didn't plug yourself, so I'm going to feasting to fasting.
Yeah, feasting _2_fasting. Underscore between each word 2TO, not the number 2. Or you can look me up, Juice Challenges, on Facebook.
Okay, definitely. Well, I enjoy your videos, but I especially appreciate your time today. But everybody, don't forget to share this video and to like it and leave a comment in the comment section below. But Zach, thank you so much, and I will be talking to you soon, my friend.
It was my pleasure. Always great to talk to you. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, man. Thanks. Later.